I've been asked many times, what is the strongest bracket 2 deck or bracket 3 deck? So I'll answer that in this video. I have crafted the most busted, powerful bracket 2 list I could think of. I built an Azusa Lost but Seeking deck. The list is pretty simple. You play some 1 mana ramp spell, and then cast your commander, play your extra land drops, and then play creatures and card draw, which is most of the deck. The deck is full of tons of busted green cards that just draw like a billion other cards. This also has the best creature bombs in the game. Of course, it's just creatures and cards. No combos, no game changers. Just the most efficient ramp and card draw the format has to offer with zero concessions for flavor or fun. There's a powerful value engine with Ivugin and High Market letting you loop Eldrazi around, and ways to tutor that up of course, but only a few tutors. This deck will 100% destroy precons, even if they try to 3v1 you from turn 1. So as you can see, I have bested the bracket system, and defeated Gavin in the marketplace of ideas. Check out the deck list linked below, and use that at your bracket 2 tournaments. Be sure to buy your singles from Cool Stuff Inc. and use my code TTM for a discount to support the channel. Now some of you might have taken a look at that deck list, or heard my description, and thought to yourself, well, this doesn't seem like a bracket 2 deck at all. And you would be correct. This isn't a bracket 2 list at all. I want to use this list to talk about evaluating the power level of decks, and also a bit about casual EDH tournaments and brackets overall. But before all of that, I need to talk about today's sponsor. Hey Jojo, can I get that foil full art Swiftfoot boots? Yeah, I need that for a deck. Oh, thanks bud. I'm so glad this is the most efficient way to sort and collect cards. But what am I gonna do in Vegas? Are you gonna bite the card? What am I gonna do in Vegas when you're not here? How am I gonna know whether or not I have a card already in my collection? I don't want to buy duplicates. If only there was something to do. I can't bring you. What should I do, bud? Oh, right. Card Castle. The easy way to sort my collection digitally. I can scan and sort my cards, and then, when I'm out and about, I know what's already in my collection. This app will let me search up my whole collection from just my phone. This way, when I'm out and about, I'm not buying duplicates of cards I already own. What's that, buddy? Oh yeah, if they use our link in the description below, they'll get 1 free month of premium access. So go to Card Castle today if you want to start scanning and sorting your collection today. Thanks to Card Castle for sponsoring the video. So how strong is this deck? Or any deck for that matter? Let's start with a few things I want you to look past when evaluating the power level of decks. Budget, individual cards, and combos. These things can point you in the direction of whether or not the deck is strong, but don't 100% tell you a deck's power level. Individually powerful cards can be good and help you win, but one Cyclonic Rift is not going to upgrade your precon into a CDH deck. It can be helpful when a generically powerful best-in-class card does a big power play and swings the game for you. But your deck has to set up a situation for that game-winning swing to happen. Otherwise, you're just delaying a loss. Budget can be helpful when determining the power level of cards, because oftentimes, powerful cards are expensive. But price is also affected by many things. Supply is one of them. There are cards which are expensive but are not particularly powerful. Sometimes it's just because they haven't been reprinted in a while, or it's on the reserve list, which I guess would mean it hasn't been reprinted in a while. Demand is another thing that affects price, and that demand can come from other formats. Ragavan's price is partially held up by Modern, and its price is not a one-to-one comparison with its power level in EDH. Additionally, some of the most in-demand and thus most expensive cards are lands, since every deck needs lands, so the demand for fetches, shocks, duels is very high. Having a good mana base for sure helps with the average power level of your deck. You are less likely to have games where you do nothing because you didn't get all of your colors. But that's all a good mana base does. Having all 10 duels in your 5-color deck doesn't actually literally win the game for you. Your non-land cards still have to do that. And finally, combos don't directly correlate to power. I feel like no combos is the most common house rule people use, but it completely misses how powerful different combos are. Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation is in a completely different ballpark than a 6-card combo which costs way more mana than those 2 cards. And that 6-card combo is much weaker than just playing Secure the Waste, untap Craterhoof. Having an infinite combo in your deck is not going to prove that it's a powerful list. So here are some factors I think contribute to power level in a much more meaningful and comprehensive way. The first is speed. How quickly can your deck win/create an insurmountable amount of advantage? And that insurmountable amount of advantage is here to cover strong decks that don't literally win fast. The turning point of a game isn't always the final turn of the game. So the point at which a control deck or ramp deck reaches enough value that the table as a whole cannot keep up would be counted here. This is why the Azusa list here is not actually a low power bracket 2 deck. Even though it would take a while before you actually literally win the game and knock every player out, but the speed at which you hit the 10 mana plus mark and can 3v1 the table happens very early and much faster than most other decks at this bracket. The next factor is how many points of interaction your opponents have. Part of the reason Oracle combo is the best thing in EDH is its 2 cards and very low mana, meaning you can go from nothing to winning very easily, very early. If we compare that to our 6 mana combo from earlier, it would take multiple turns to actually put all these pieces in play and get to the win, meaning your opponents just have many more times when they are able to cast interaction to stop you from winning. This is another reason the Azusa deck is so sneakily powerful. Getting Azusa out on turn 2 and then putting 2 additional lands in play right then and there sets you up to ramp and accelerate really fast, meaning the time at which your opponents have to actually stop you from doing so is basically turn 1 hitting a mana dork or countering your Azusa on turn 2. Once the Azusa is out and you already put the 2 extra lands in play, it's too easy to just play her again and keep ramping further. Now this also goes for non-combo wins. Your deck's ability to go from nothing to doing its strong thing or winning will reduce interaction points. If you have a list that instantly puts a board into play and then amplifies it, your list is way more dangerous and your opponents have to be much more wary about tapping out. If a deck uses on-board incremental damage or mill to win, the power level is way lower because your opponents have so many more turns and opportunities to stop you from taking them out of the game. The last factor I think is most important to power is what your opponents need to beat your deck. This is somewhat similar to interaction points, but it's more about the specific type of interaction. Looking back at the Thassa's Oracle combo, it's not just the best combo because it's low mana and has only 2 cards in it, but because you can only stop it with a small subset of cards. Creature removal doesn't actually do anything. Once the Oracle's ability is on the stack, you can exile your whole deck with the consultation, meaning you need a counterspell, stifle effect, stacks piece, or a few other very specific jank options to actually beat it. This is why not every random deck can be a CDH deck. You have to take into account a specific thing in the metagame. Now, moving away from Oracle combo, there are other things your decks can do which require your opponents to have specific things to beat it, and that will increase the power of your deck. If your win condition is casting a big instant or sorcery and copying it, outside of blue, there aren't many things your opponents can do to actually interact with that. And we can apply this to more than just win conditions. A stacks deck, which reduces your opponent's mana and ability to play cards, sort of requires players to have a low mana curve to beat it. A Winter Orb is way stronger against a player who's using Crozan Grip as their artifact removal, as opposed to somebody playing Nature's Claim. A Storm deck is difficult to stop because what are non-blue decks going to do against rituals and fast mana? Certain archetypes require your opponents to have considered them in the deck building phase to beat it. And the more specific a piece needs to be to beat your deck, the more powerful your list is going to feel. And if that is something realistically players are not putting in their casual EDH decks, your deck will win a lot more against those lists. Here are a few examples from my decks. In my Mina and Den list, one thing I can do is play Glacial Chasm and bounce it with my commander, allowing me to attack and avoid all damage when it's not my turn. There are a lot of decks I've run into that literally cannot beat this, because they aren't playing any effect that lets them destroy lands. My Tawanos list is also an example of this. In this deck, I do a lot of recurring and looping of artifacts for value, and although artifact removal is good against the deck, what is much more devastating against my list is Graveyard Hate. If you can exile some of my key baubles, the deck's engines become way worse. If you don't have a way to exile my silly little trinkets, this list will beat you in the late game. These decks have a sort of you must be this tall to ride factor to them, where if you don't have a specific thing, it's going to be a lot more difficult to beat my deck. Of course, neither of these are unbeatable. I've lost plenty of games with each, and you definitely don't need Graveyard Hate specifically to stop my Tawanos list or land destruction to beat Mina and Den. But the fact that my decks have these cards, or the lists are constructed in this specific way, that regular normal creature and artifact enchantment removal is less effective against them, does increase the power of the deck. So, going back to the video's original premise, what is the strongest bracket 2 deck? The strongest deck you could make without game changers will never be a bracket 2 deck. That's just a fact. I can try to take all the game changers out from a Magda CDH list, but the speed, interaction points, and requirements of my opponent to beat a deck like this are all still there. A Magda deck can do a lot even without game changers. So whenever somebody says their deck is technically one bracket, it usually isn't actually that bracket, whether that is higher or lower. I mean, my Mardu list is technically bracket 4 because of Volcano Helion and Whip of Erebos, but it plays more like a bracket 3 list than anything else. This is actually why I have beef with the idea of a casual EDH tournament. I've seen a lot of people talk about bracket 2 or 3 tournaments, and I feel like those are sort of self-defeating. The point of the brackets is to show where your list lies among all the possible power levels of Commander. A bracket 2 tournament is just CEDH with a longer ban list. Now, of course, you can have fun doing that. If you and your friends want to do CEDH with the game changers as an additional ban list, that's fine. I'm not telling you you shouldn't do that. I would just caution against the idea of casual EDH tournaments. In my experience, they usually lead to poor gameplay experiences, since people then don't have the same idea of what a strong deck is. And you get a mix of players playing CEDH minus a few cards, and then upgraded precons. You can't really use brackets as a way to facilitate a competitive tournament. It just doesn't work. If you want to do an EDH tournament with prizes, just play CEDH. Okay, back to the original premise one more time, and this time we answer the question in good faith. What is the strongest bracket 2 list before you creep into bracket 3? I don't know. That's not a joke, by the way. I actually don't have a clean answer to this, and I wanted to talk a little bit about brackets here, specifically the borders between them. In my initial video about brackets, I concluded by saying I like them because of these rules and wish they expanded upon those a little bit instead of just adding a bunch of game changers. And then in April, when they updated the bracket system, they added a bunch of game changers without changing other stuff. And this video isn't about whether or not those additions were good or bad, but my problem is they didn't address the issues I was having with brackets. Let's read the definition for bracket 2 on the chart. Decks are focused, even if every card choice isn't the highest power and comparable to an average precon. Wins are often telegraphed or incremental. No game changers, no mass land denial, no chaining extra turns, no 2-card infinite combos, game enders, lockouts, or infinite. Few tutors. This description I find a bit odd. I'll use my SIG deck as an example. This is a goad politics deck. I want to make deals and force players to attack other people. In my testing with this deck, I played against a lot of different lists, from precons to upgraded precons to custom decks to games with patrons on my stream. And the deck never felt particularly overpowered in any bracket that I went to. And technically, this is bracket 4. I think in the initial list, I miscounted and had 4 game changers instead of 3, and then they added a bunch, so now it has 7. And to back up my claim that it did not feel very overpowered even with 7 game changers, I actually have some data because I'm keeping track of stats. This version of the list specifically only won 1 out of the last 4 games, and that was on turn 15. I know 4 games is not a huge sample size, but even with the new additions causing this to have 7 game changers, this deck still does not feel significantly more powerful than the hodgepodge of decks that I played against. So, here's the question. Let's say I cut all the game changers. Is it bracket 2? Well, I'm not really sure. As far as the theme goes, I feel like I'm playing optimal high power choices for the goad, politics theme. There aren't really concessions for budget or fun. It is very much optimized jank. But if the theme was stronger, like my Mina and Den list, which is a lands mid-range deck, then I would need to make serious concessions about the high power options that I'm picking in the deck. I tend to find that strong support cards only go so far if your theme is very weak. And if you have a strong theme, you need to tone back the support cards unless you want your deck to be very powerful. This is where I find the brackets to fall apart a little bit, because we have lots of strong support cards on the Game Changers list, but we don't have many rules that limit the power of a theme, just combos and extra turns. I think my Azusa list takes this to the extreme, but I think you can do that by accident. Playing something like a Maelstrom Wanderer or Yidris can create a ton of value and resources, more than many casual decks would be able to handle, and you can do so without game changers or combos. I really wish that there was something in the bracket 2 rule set about turn at which you hit 6 mana, or max cards drawn in a turn. I'm not even sure what the correct answer is here. I'm genuinely curious what you in the comments think about this. I just think you can accidentally build a deck that is a little stronger than what bracket 2 is intended to be. So I'm not sure I have a great answer about where exactly your deck swaps from bracket 2 to 3. This is why I've sort of defaulted to 3 and just left most of my decks as is, and I haven't had any issues since. I play removal and card draw in all of my decks, so whatever you bring to the table is fine. I can remove something and draw cards to find the removal. As of making this video, I think the border between bracket 2 and 3 happens here. If your deck needs 7-ish turns before it does something big, has many opportunities for your opponents to interact, and does not require your opponents to have anything particularly strange or be in a specific color to effectively interact with your deck, it should be fine in bracket 2. Additionally, if your theme is particularly jank, some of the best-in-class cards for that jank, less supported theme are probably fine. But if your theme is something that is more heavily supported by wizards, aristocrats, landfall, zombies, something like that, and you are playing mostly best-in-class cards for your theme, you are probably at bracket 3, even if your deck is slow. Personally, I want to do more testing with brackets. Right now, bracket 3 has been the most common one for me and the bracket I've played in the most. I think I'm going to try and cut some game changers from my slower lists and see where that lands. I've always been of the opinion that if your deck can be stopped by normal, commonly played removal and interaction that most colors have access to, at a later turn, your deck is basically fine at most casual pods, so I do not expect my Tawanos list minus the game changers or my Sig deck minus the game changers to cause any real issues at bracket 2. And in a future video, I will report back how those decks performed in bracket 2 and how a new deck I'm working on for bracket 2 will also perform. I hope you found this video about power levels interesting. I'm really excited to see the comments for this one. If you have found a foolproof perfect divide between bracket 3 and 2, let me know. I'm curious. Thank you so very much for watching, and special thanks to my tier 3 patrons, whose names you see here. If you want to be in the credits too, check out the Patreon.